Good afternoon. My name is Tom. I come to you from the great state of Maine. I have one reason you should subscribe to this channel. This channel is all about the great outdoors. And I guarantee you will like the content that is on this channel. Good morning. My name is Tom. I come to you from the Rustic log cabin in Northern Maine. Welcome to my cabin this morning and get yourself a cup of coffee. I had a comment come in this week that I am going to follow up on. 45. Good morning, 45. I actually had a couple comments come in this week on the same topic. So I'm going to cover both comments in this video. I should go out and get one, but I won't. It's morning time and I'm having coffee. But it was in my last video, what this is all about anyways, when I was out ice fishing. It was talking about my Cusk trap. And 45's comment was, he was thanking me for going into detail for young people starting out, going into the details of my Cusk trap and how to use it and stuff like that. So I kind of got thinking about that this morning while I was sitting here just looking out the window. I got stuff I need to go out there and do, but wind is blowing right now and sitting here having coffee is a pretty good thing. But anyways, 45 was just talking about the details of the trap and how I went through it. And then Jeffrey from Pennsylvania, good morning, Jeffrey. I probably should call him Jeff, he's my age. Anyways, good morning, Jeff. I call you Jeffrey because you keep saying I adopted you. And I've got grandsons that they would rather be shortening up their names, and I still call them their full name. But anyways, Jeff from Pennsylvania, he wanted to know where I came up with the idea for that Cusk trap, because he learned about that Cusk trap when he was up in Alaska from the, I remember him telling me who they was, but I'm not just going to say Eskimos. Because, again, so many comments, hard to keep track of every single word that's said in individual comments. So I kind of store them up here as blocks of memory and best I can. And then I tell people you can fix it in the comment if you want. You want to know where I got that idea from? Well, we'll start with that idea first, and then I'll follow up with 45's comment. When I was young growing up, money, we didn't have money. There was no money. But I still wanted to go fishing. I have fished with a stick. Oh my, my first fish pole was a stick. My first fish pole was a stick. And I fished that way for years, you know, so that's going to follow up onto these Cusk traps. My first fish pole was you go to the brook, you cut down a piece of alder, 6 feet long, 8 feet long, if it depended on the brook, maybe 10 feet long. And then you tie on whatever length that pole is. If it's a 6-foot pole, then you put on a 6-foot line. That'd be a small brook. If it's a medium-sized brook, then you'll want an 8-foot stick and tie on a string to the end of that. And then if it's a big one, then you get yourself a 10-foot pole with a 10-foot piece of line. And that gives you actually 20 feet of reach from the shoreline. What you want is a stick that's got a crotch on the top of it so that you can tie your line around the base of that crotch so it won't slip off. And fishing with a stick is something, I mean, even to this day, I got sticks in here that are still part of my fishing, just like you saw them Cusk traps. Now that was a new set of Cusk traps, but I'd been building Cusk traps like that for 50 years. Where the Cusk traps for me came in it was necessity. Back when I was younger, I didn't have ice traps. I couldn't afford to go out and buy ice traps. And the lake that I lived close to was 2 miles away, so we could fish anytime. It's just a 2-mile walk down to the lake, and we could be fishing all winter. So that wasn't a that was pretty sweet. But again, I didn't have any ice traps, so that's where the stick came in. Put some fishing line and wrap around the stick. And back then, a lot of times you fish just under the ice for salmon, stuff like that. Brook trout just under the ice. So if you had a stick with 20 feet of line on it, 30 feet of line on it, you were golden. You know, put down a couple feet for your shiner and your bait. That's not the best way to ice fish, but when you don't have any traps, it is the only way to ice fish. You know, it wasn't that many years ago that all ice traps were handmade and homemade. I don't know if I could find them all now or not, but I've managed to pick up some pretty interesting ice traps over the years in lawn sales, homemade stuff, made from anything and everything. But that's where the stick idea came from, Jeff, was necessity. I would like to say that I learned it from some Indians, or I learned it from an Eskimo, or I'd like to say that it got passed down by generations and generations from my family. But necessity and common sense. So I was fishing Moosehead Lake for Cusk up there when I was in my early 20s. I would go up there for a week's worth of Cusk fishing up there. We fished day and night, and those were the traps that we used. And now they just make really good Cusk traps. So that should answer your question, Jeff. Now let's get to, before I run out of too much time here, let's get to 45 thing. You saw, I did discuss the trap in there, 45. Now for you guys that haven't seen the video, it's just a stick, 2 feet long, with a nail on each side, and then you can wrap your line up quick by 2 feet at a time. I wrap it around the stick, and then I also will wrap it around the 2 nails just for speed. And the reason for that is when you're Cusk fishing, if you have a regular tip up for Cusk fishing that just allows the Cusk to take out line, you only check your Cusk traps once an hour. That's the law here in the state of Maine. So in an hour's time, a Cusk can run off a whole spool of line, and he can go through rocks, sticks, trees, and you'll never get that fish. Not only will you never get the fish, but you lost all your line. So what I do is I take in I'll be regular fishing through the day. I'll be regular fishing through the day with my regular tip-ups, and then at supper time, when it's getting closer to when I want to fish for Cusk at night, take those in, put out my Cusk traps. Now with a Cusk trap, you put on a big sinker, you send it down the bottom so you see it'll stay down there, stay put, and then you run out 5 or 6 more feet of line, that's all. Just have it in the hole, and then that gives the Cusk a little bit of room to take in your bait, but not get too far away from the hole so he doesn't get tangled up and all of that. So that's the whole theory behind that stick, and it just saves your line, saves your fish, and sometimes you can go out and have 4 Cusk in an hour's run. Sometimes you can have all 5 traps with a Cusk on them. So it just saves your time and energy. And the other thing with Cusk fishing is have extra hooks with you, because they'll swallow it all the way down to their gut. That's what they're gonna do. They've got an hour to do it. But you don't need to throw that hook away, and you don't need to cut it off, because that throws it away too. Is just take it off. Like I have them on a swivel, so that I can just pull the hook off, throw the fish in my basket, and then when I'm cleaning the fish, I can retrieve my hook. Because I fish with a big hook. I fish with a number 2/0 hook, because I don't want any small Cusk. What I want is 5-pound Cusk. I want them up 4. You give me some 4s, you give me some 5, give me some 6, but that's what I want. I don't want the 1.5-pound Cusk. And if you get a 1.5-pound Cusk, let him go. You're not going to get enough meat off that small Cusk to make it worth killing him. Wait until you get a 3-pounder, a 4-pounder, and you will. fish with bigger bait. Fish with bigger bait. That's all. Fish with a 8-inch sucker. Fish with a 10-inch sucker. They've got mouths the size of semi trucks. It's unbelievable how big a bait that a cusk can pull in. So fish with big bait. By fishing with big bait, you will get some 5-pounders. You will get some 10-pounders. I have fished cusk for this out on this lake, and I have fished cusk from one end of Moosehead Lake to the other end, and did the same thing up there. The bigger the bait, the bigger the cusk. So that's just something to keep in mind when it comes to that. A couple other things here. Let's see, 10 minutes. I'll give you a couple more minutes. A couple more things on this cusk. They spawn in March. So that's a really good time to be fishing for some big ones. What you want to be looking for is sandy bottom. I have spots out here where they go from 50 feet of water, 60 feet of water, then they go up to 6 feet of water. That's where you want to be fishing, right on that drop off or close by, because they're coming in to spawn, and that's where you're going to get your crack at your big one. And let me tell you, I should have got it down. I'll do another video on a stick. Because you're fishing in 6 feet of water on a big fish, you're pulling on the line and so are they. So what's happening is it's sawing on the bottom of the ice. There's so much to cover here, I can't do it in one video. They're sawing on the bottom, so your line gets stuck in the bottom of the ice. So when you're pulling in that cusk, he's going to pull up to the bottom of the hole, and you're not going to be able to get him. So you need something to push when you get a big one. Little one's not going to do that. You get a 10-pounder, you get an 8-pounder, that's what's going to do it, is that sawing on the ice, and you're not going to get that fish in the hole. So I've made a crotch stick that's 4 feet long that I can slide down my line until I unhook the line from the bottom of the ice, and then I can play in my big cusk. So, like I said, there's a lot wrapped up here in cusk fishing. It's one of those things that I really enjoy doing because no one else does it. Basically, there's no laws on it other than checking your traps every hour. You're allowed 5 traps. Out on this lake, you're allowed 10 cusk. It's an enormous fishery for me. Always has been, so I love cusk fishing. It's right up there for me. It's right up there with trout fishing, lake trout fishing. Anytime I can catch a 10-pound fish, I'm all on board for that. So, 45, thank you for the great comment. And Jeff, I hope that answers your comment about where the East Grand Woodsman came up with a stick for cusk fishing. So, you got to remember, when I was growing up, we didn't have the internet and we didn't have YouTube. So we had to use our own imagination. And one thing I had a lot of was sticks. I had a hunting knife, I had a saw, and I had an axe. So those were how I made a lot of my equipment back in those days. So, hey, you guys have a great week, and I will see you in the next video.